Hello, everyone. We're back for episode 11. Today, I have with me a very special guest that I'm very happy to be here, and that is Mohammed MoeycQ. Is it Tizani? That the correct way to pronounce that?
Yeah, no, you got it pretty spot on, man. You got it pretty
Lovely,
spot on.
lovely. Well, sometimes I mess up the names. I'll be honest. The last one, Kingsford, got me. I don't know how, but it got me good, and so this time wanted to make sure that I got the pronunciation correct. So, how
You
you
good?
doing today, man?
Tired as usual, man.
As usual.
Haven't had my fourth cup of coffee for the night, but planning on an early one tonight actually for once, so no one will see me in the old FPLs till 4 in the morning tonight.
Brilliant.
Uh,
Well, I love how you say early one when it's midnight. That's the true
that's
sign of a professional right there. The old Counter Strike grind of being up till ridiculous hours in the morning.
good work
So
at stuff, of course.
yeah. So obviously, for those that don't know, I can't imagine there would be many, but you have been in Counter Strike for a long time now. In fact, I think when I started just watching the scene in general, you were over at Immunity. Um, Might have been a little bit after I started, but still, it was around that time. And obviously, that Immunity lineup, you had quite a lot of international experience. And with a lot of the people that I've interviewed, that's been, I guess, sort of the main thing that general people lack when they come up the scene, right? It's that international experience, the veteran experience that you've gathered now. So, what would you say, aside from playing better opposition, is like the main advantages of getting that international experience?
I think you learn how to deal with pressure situations quite a lot. There's a certain maturity I think that Australia kind of lacks, in its tier one, tier two scene. And when you go overseas, you start to appreciate. You kind of get a face-on look at how the European teams are practicing. You get to scrim against them, not just play the officials. You kind of actually the first time you go, anyone will tell you you just get wiped, like you just get like obliterated, right? And it teaches you a harsh lesson that we're not as good as we think we are. And I think we had an issue in like 2016, 17 where Australia thought we were better than we were around the time where the whole Vox Seminole lineup was
Yeah,
making way.
I remember.
And then we kind of got a harsh hit of reality. I think that immunity roster was maybe the second or third roster to compete consistently internationally, and we just got a harsh lesson. And I think throughout the years, and we're looking now like Urkas, Grat, the players that we went together and kind of grew together overseas, we bring that back here and it just filtered down slowly through the players. So pretty much like I mean, too long didn't read is you just get wiped and you learn harsh lessons. You understand what work ethic is needed, and if you don't get to go overseas and experience that, then you don't really know.
Yeah. So, would you say that nowadays the current level of, I'd say, just aim and in general is equal to the EU and NA, or do you think there's still definitely improvement in that sort of emphasis of the game to be made in Australia?
No, I think we're still not really close. I think we're obviously closer to North America than we are to Europe. If you look outside of like your C9s, your liquids, your NRGs, and
Yeah,
the next two three teams down. Other than that, man, like NA's not that much better than us really. They just have
yeah,
an elite pool of players, and that's kind of where it ends, right? But are we catching up? It's hard to say. When you're just having one, two, maybe three teams, if you include order, causing upsets overseas. Is that Australia catching up? Not really. Maybe a pool of players in Australia, yeah. But as a region, I don't think we've caught up just yet.
Do you think there will ever be a time when we are seriously competing with NA, or do you think AU will always be a region where, we get a few players that get into that international scene, and then most of the local scene just stays around what it is now, maybe gets into that sort of NA area where NA is right now?
But potentially, I think Australia's always been a country like in terms of esports that grows in isolation, right? We
Hmm.
grow within ourselves, maybe obviously New Zealand as well, but we grow without having to play against other countries, right? I guess to answer your question, I think we can get closer, but I don't think like it's just like we'll get to that later, but it's just a race you can't win, right? And there's actually that situation in Australia at the moment. So then you compare it to Europe and North America, and it's like crazy. I mean, the teams that we just wiped the floor with are playing full time, and even the same in Asia, right? Um, so we'd have to really, grow locally to be able to catch up because I mean, yeah, it's just spiraling out of control at the moment. I mean, it's not the be all and end all to be full time. I mean, there's a lot of full time teams in the Asian region that don't really compare to the top six in Australia.
Yeah.
But if you look at North America and Europe, then it starts to get a bit hairy and it's not so easy.
Yeah. So when you say, so obviously Australia is quite a far away from most of, I'd say, the majority of where CS is played, being EU and NA. Do you think that it is harder for, say, us to elevate to the same place they're at right now as, say, Brazil, or I don't know, what's another example? I guess you could say Asia. Do you think it's easier for them because they're closer, or is that in any way a factor to how fast we can sort of move up the overall level of CS in the scene?
Look, it's really hard to say. I think a lot of people will tell you it's about the opposition that you play. Within Asia, they have they all play each other, like East Asia, Southeast Asia, China. They can all scrim each other, and I've been there many times and been able to experience. There's also a lot of competition. You got Alibaba, I think it is, investing heavily into. I hope I got that right. Into esports over there, and they're running like $1 million local comps. You know, what I mean, like major level prize money, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And these guys are situated in gaming houses. They're playing full time. Um, and if you look at South America, I think South America and the Middle East are probably also regions that grow in isolation as well. And the South Americans work extremely hard, man. They sacrifice a lot. They move over to NA and they make those sacrifices, right? So the only way to do it, I guess, is to I guess move, right? If a team
yeah,
wants to kind of relocate, then you're going to get the same effects that a team in South America do. Because I don't think the Brazilians can play in NA in terms of ping, but I'm not 100%.
yeah. I'm not sure off the top of my head. So
I think it's just high ping, high ping.
yeah, probably. Yeah. So in that, when you were talking there, you briefly mentioned team houses, and I know that especially in the international scene, it's still kind of a bit controversial to whether or not a team house is beneficial. So,
Yeah.
what's your sort of take on the team house idea in esports?
You need to, if you don't have a good team environment, then it'll just be kind of shite, I guess, right? So the
Yeah,
Greyhound kind of environment is like kind of the boys, right? Which is what we
yeah,
tried to achieve in the Chiefs. I think we did have that. So if that old Chiefs roster I was in, which we'll probably get into as well, if we moved to a team house, it'd be probably really good, right? Because we just all got along really well. But look, over time, I mean, it's hard to say, but I mean, it's obviously working for Greyhound, but I don't think it'll work for every team. I think having an office environment is a lot more, um, suitable where you go in and you work like, as if you're a night play, you're working a 9 to 5 job, right? But
yeah,
in Australia, that's impossible, and that's because Australia's huge, right? Like you
yeah,
have to relocate to a different state, and that in itself can be difficult and hard. If you have family and um, commitments and things like that. So look, team houses overall, like thumbs up. If you can make it work, great. Um, Office style, working environments, even better. But overall, does it benefit you? Of course it does, no doubt. I mean, the results just show like you're there all day. If you have the right work ethic along with that, like it's just the deadliest combo you can have, right?
yeah,
You can't get better than that, especially if you have the right work ethic. But if you don't, then you're still screwed, right? You look at the Winter Fox lineup that went to North America. Quite a lazy team, really, in terms of work ethic and stuff like that. I don't think Dexter was in game leading at the time, or as experienced as he is now. So I don't think he would have, done a lot of the work. And I think, in general, that project failed because, I mean, can't really pin it down to one thing, but they were in a team house and they were just the work ethic wasn't right, the environment wasn't right. stories went around, but it just in general it didn't work for them. So they're a good example.
Mm. So you'd say like it almost has to be like you can't force five people to be in a house together. If they're all in an agreement that, yeah, we want to live together, we can do this together, then that's sort of the best way to create that team house rather than forcing people who don't really want to be in the same place the whole time together into
Yeah,
a house.
yeah, 100%. I was actually in the first Greyhound signed lineup, and Will, who was the owner of Greyhound at the time, said, "Look, in about a year's time, I plan to create a gaming house in Melbourne." I looked at him, and we all looked at him like, "Yeah, okay, whatever, bro." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then a year on, and he actually did it, the madman. But it was a good growing period for them. I think they got along really well. You had Sean, Greatest Faction, and Okas, who got along really well. Ollie's obviously a nice bloke. Of course, they got Dexter. I don't really know that well, but they all got along with the team owner as well, and it just came together for them. So it either comes together or it doesn't really, but you can't force it. You're right.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask you about the IEM Sydney situation. In that, it always seems to me like whenever we get into this IEM Sydney tournament, the Australian teams will overperform. At least in my eyes, right? Obviously not, maybe not this year because Renegades didn't make it into the playoffs, but
Yep.
in previous years when they've been the underdog, they've sort of, even in the Chiefs lineups where you sort of get this almost a wholly new team that are taking maps off, MIBR, or I guess that was SK back then. These really solid lineups and Greyhounds, Chiefs, and these top Australian teams turn up to that IM Sydney event and they start playing really well. Yet when we go to the major, we don't see anywhere near that kind of level. So what do you think? Obviously, there's maybe the jet lag, but is there anything else there that maybe you think of?
Look, home soil advantage is a real thing, right? People
Yeah.
think it's not a real thing, but it definitely is. The other thing is, there's not a lot of research to be done on us when well, I haven't played at one myself, but when the top teams kind of go to IM, there's not a lot of research that can be done. Whereas if you go to the minors, right, you're playing a lot of games. People are watching really closely. These things mean a lot to them. Whereas these bigger teams come to us and kind of underestimate the talent that we have here.
Hmm.
Um, Look, and I don't blame them really. I mean, you look at Oz as a whole, and you think like a couple of teams max, right? That can possibly cause an upset. So I think that they come underprepared. We drive well. If you're in Australia, you're not jet lagged. Just I think it's a confidence thing, really. Like you're not as scared when you're playing here, right? If you travel 30 hours and you have 2 days in between, and then you get rolled by Europeans in scrims, and then you go and play a tournament, you might choke, right? But here it's kind of like the pressure's off. It's really hard to say, man, without having experienced it myself. But at the same token, last year when the Chiefs roster was there with Dizzy APOC, I think they told me that they were absolutely like rolling Fnatic in scrims. They were trashing like some of the best teams there.
Hmm.
And then when it got to the officials, they bombed out like really hard last year, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit inconsistent. But I guess the best answer to that is yeah, home soil advantage, man. It is a real thing.
Yeah. It's well, I can imagine. Now, you were saying before about or you briefly mentioned the in-game leader role. Now, what I wanted to ask you was when you were talking about the attitude when it comes to the game and how motivated players are, how big of a role do you think an in-game leader plays in just the general mentality of a team? And is that more of like there's certain in-game leaders that specialize in it, or do you think that has to be a talent that you have as an in-game leader, the ability to keep an attitude a certain way?
I don't think an in-game leader can do it. Honestly,
Mm.
I've learned that over the years you can give people the right tools, right? But are they going to use it? It's up to them, right? When I talk about attitude, it's kind of like you know as an in-game leader, for me especially, and the best teams in the world, kind of work this way. You kind of need it's a 5-man effort, and you need everyone to be on the same page as you. And if an in-game leader wants to kind of do things this way, and it's not necessarily that the players won't do it. It's just that they're not fully invested into what you want to do, right? They're not watching the same demos. They're not studying the notes, studying the things that you have to memorize as 5 players, right? Then it's not going to work, right? It's not going to work. And I think a team like Chiefs is the current Chiefs is a good example of that, because they all love the theory of the game. They love studying the game. And Greyhound like to play a certain way where they rely heavily on their individuals making good decisions, but they're all on that same wavelength, right? And I think that's the important part. That can an IGL bring everyone to that wavelength? I don't think so.
Hmm.
I don't think it's you can try. You can give people the tools, as I said, right? But if they're not going to grasp it and really use that, then it's very difficult. And I think that's why you see a lot of roster changes, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, so that's something else. So would you say that's the main reason for so many roster changes? Because I mean, I know that especially the people in the casting scene joke about it all the time. How we get like 1 season rosters, and it's like, please, can we just get people staying together for just at the very most
Yeah.
3 seasons, where you guys can actually try everything out and get it working? Where it seems so rushed over here, where it's like, if it doesn't work within the first MDL season, then suddenly it's like the lineup goes out the door.
Yeah, it's hard to say really if that's the sole reason for it. I'm kind of just talking on an IGL perspective at a top level,
Yeah,
right? And it was more related to kind of like how much can an IGL actually influence, the motivation and the work ethic and the attitude of his players, right? You can only
yeah,
do so much. In terms of roster changes in Australia, probably not. That's not really the reason. I think people just kind of have a bad attitude overall. Individually aren't capable, not disciplined enough, and it's hard. It's a shame because a lot of those disciplinary issues, and mentality issues can make things seem like they're not working, but you really don't know if it was going to work in the first place, right? It's kind of like, to break it down to a basic CS level, making a mistake. Well, hey, was the strategy we were trying to run actually going to work? Who knows, right? And then over time, you just build, and yeah, I don't know. I think that's the reason teams die. It's kind of rough, really, but it's for various reasons. Yeah.
yeah. With the attitude thing, I was just thinking about an example of a player that that obviously did have a big impact on that, and that was the old. I guess he's still around now, but the old Cloud9's Freakazoid, in the way that, especially the way they talked about him, he was almost like, the chief of the team that would sit back and sort of encourage everyone, and chair slaps and high fives and all that lot, and really keep everybody emotionally in the game. And then Sean Gares would be the guy to do the tactics level. So do you think that maybe, I don't know, do you think that that's a role that maybe there's not too many of that in the Australian scene, or is that something that you personally feel like needs to be filled, or not really that important?
I don't think it's that important. The thing is, right, is Freak kind of like got pushed down in that
Yeah,
scene, right? So sure he can slap chairs and yell and yada yada, but how is his work ethic in terms of the game, right? Is he studying the game? Studying the protocols and the strategy and watching those demos. I don't know. I can't really judge, obviously, right?
yeah,
What I'm saying is like there's so many aspects, like it's endless. But you look, you just need to not be. You can't give up, right? And you need to keep motivated and not tilt. And the thing is, like Counter Strike's a game where anything can happen, and no matter if you're 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds down, if you take it one round at a time, there's a lot of fairy tale comebacks, man. A lot of comebacks you see it day to day. Does Australia lack that? I think, of course, yeah. I think, regardless of the level of the team that I've played at, once you start going down, people start to kind of the tone in the voice changes. Um, People making rash decisions. I'm one of them, to be honest.
yeah.
One of my issues is as we approach losing a game, because losing means so much to me, right? I start to slowly feel it slipping away from me, and
Hmm.
that's something that I'm trying to work on. But I recognize that, right? And if we all recognize, individual issues, and we can cut that out.
Yeah. Yeah, the sort of the not letting it that sort of dark devil, I guess, behind you get you and pull you down rather than being able to sort of keep a clear mind and say, okay, you know what, we've got to keep the same level and taking it one round at a time, because you always hear that, take it one round at a time. But I can imagine, I mean, I've never played it at a high professional level, so I wouldn't know, but I could imagine that that mentality of take it one round at a time is a lot harder than what people make it out to be, and is probably also why so many people say it, because you don't understand how important it is to be able to almost, play one round at a time and get rid of everything that happened in the last few,
Yeah.
apart from a tactical point of view, and go, okay, let's play this round here.
Well, everyone's got their different reasons, right? For me, like when I'm on the other side of the world playing Counter Strike and I'm about to lose and get knocked out in the quarterfinals,
Yeah.
where we expected to make grand finals, right? I'm thinking about, my daughter at home, my son at home. I'm thinking about all the commitments I left behind and what people are sacrificing just to have me try and go and fill my dreams, right?
Mhm.
And when I'm approaching that, we're 7-10 down. Now we're 7-11, 7-12, 7-13. It's like slowly in my head, right? So I have my own reasons, obviously, that probably people don't share. But I guess in general, I mean, everyone has a different thing playing in their head as to, maybe it's, hey, shit, maybe I'm going to get kicked from this team.
Yeah.
Um, which international team's going to recognize me? My HLTV rating is going to be red.
Yeah.
God knows, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure there's people have their own reasons, right? But in general, it slowly creeps up on you throughout a game, and that's what makes it really hard.
Yeah. So you mentioned there about being a father, obviously, and as you could probably tell, I'm a little boy, so I'm not there yet. But how does that? I can't imagine how that would affect the way that you have or the outlook that you have on the scene, and how much importance you place on those games. So does it add an additional drive? Because I imagine it would, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. I was a father at 23, maybe 24 at the latest, and I'm 26 now. Um, but it definitely does because, man, like, although, I have to adjust my work hours. I'm starting at 7 or 8 in the morning. And as an IGO, I have to review demos throughout the day on lunch breaks, on the way to work, on the way back from work, and then getting home and, spending a couple of hours with the kids, having dinner, and then jumping on and running the theory and organizing the scrims and the calendar and the officials and, keep in touch with management. And that's all time like I could be spending with them.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, thankfully, they're still little, right? So they sleep at about 8 o'clock anyway. But it's still any time is precious in this life, man. You don't know when it can be taken from you.
Yeah.
You don't know, life can get taken in an instant, right? So
Yeah.
every single minute on this game is time that I could be, doing something else. And then when I lose, it hurts a lot more if I have, you know, teammates that don't share the work ethic. It hurts a lot. It's really hard emotionally to stay where I am, man. And I don't know if you have any questions ready for kind of how I work everything into this in general. But I think for me, it's extremely difficult, and it does help with motivation, definitely, man. I don't waste any time when I'm at the PC. I'm not at the PC browsing Reddit or on Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah.
Literally, I'm on the PC, and if I'm, obviously I've been dwindling a little bit with other games just for streaming, but 95% of it is just Counter Strike's open, watching demos in the deathmatch. It's just yeah, it's very hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you were talking there about your schedule, and obviously you work a 9 to 5. Is that correct? Or you work a
Well, I
job?
have yeah, I work full time Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
But I have to adjust the hours. So I'm working earlier to like kind of like 7 to 3, 8 to 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thankfully they compensate for that. But that's
Mhm.
what I had to do to get more hours in the afternoon before practice.
Yeah. So I imagine that must be, you got to fit a lot there into that schedule. So
Well, the thing is, Ash, is this is literally, I mean, thank God for where life's taken me,
yeah.
you know. But obviously it's had a big impact on, where I've progressed in Counter Strike. Uh, so I don't know. Did you want me to give you a little history run? Did you have
Yeah,
any questions
yep,
prepared?
for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, look. I mean, look. These issues dated back to, obviously I played Counter Strike Condition Zero first, but this is all the single like young days
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
Moved over to 1.6, moved over to CS Source, which is like kind of where I found most of my success. So I won three nationals total. And then what was interesting was I was in the roster at the end of Counter Strike Source that actually became Vox Eminor. So
yeah,
that was Sponge, Havoc, Azar, Top Gun, Sniper, right? So I was a
yeah,
part of that lineup. And because I was working shift work at the time, right? So I could practice 3 or 4 nights a week at the maximum. Um, and Counter Strike Global Offensive just came out. I spoke to Chad, as in Sponge, over in Brisbane. We were there at the time, and I basically said, "Look, I don't know how big this game's going to get. I can't practice 5 or 6 nights a week. Just replace me, whatever, right?" And then I kind of disappeared for about a year and a half. Came back, and now they're playing at this thing called a major, right? And they're overseas and doing all this stuff, and they
yeah.
became eventually became the Renegades roster, right? So that was the first time that my schedule kind of interfered with an opportunity. And then the second time was obviously the first immunity roster with Rika, Emag, James, Zusi, and
Mhm.
myself. And we attended, we were the best team in Australia at the time because Renegades were overseas. And we, we were qualifying for everything. We qualified for the minor, WCA, a couple of different comps, and it was all back to back. And I was working full time at the time, and it was at a job that is less giving than it is than my current one.
Yeah,
So we went to the minor in South Korea, we went to Singapore twice in a month, and then we had to go to China, and then that's like annual leave is gone, right? Like
yeah,
I couldn't go. I literally couldn't go, and that's when I got replaced by Ofnu. Um, and that's another time I was removed from a roster because of time constraints, right? And this is all, man, to put food on the table. It's not to, I'm working. Hey, I'm saving some money. I'm putting food on the table for the family, and things like that. And then the next immunity roster, which ended up becoming Greyhound, um, and that was actually the first time that I received a paycheck in Counter Strike. So it meant a lot that we actually, progressed with that immunity roster with Gratisfaction, Urcast, Burn, etc. And then we finally got signed by Greyhound. And then a month later, it's like, hey, bro, we want to practice throughout the afternoon. Sorry, literally time constraints was the only reason, right?
yeah,
So second time, bang, see you later, right? Had to work back up through the ranks. Really demotivating at the time. And then the next time was, I mean, the next big opportunity was the Chiefs opportunity. And that's why, man, like, I'm not ashamed to say that when we went over and we beat Order in Adelaide, and then we went to Auckland and we beat Tainted Minds in the grand final, and then we went to Brisbane, and it was like the ultimate storyline, right? We finally
yeah,
beat Greyhound, right, on
yeah.
land, looking at them face to face, man. Like
Must have felt like a movie.
I think Brisbane wasn't as emotional, but like Auckland especially, like man, like I was shedding tears, man, because like the amount of sacrifice that has gone in, like I was literally like bawling my eyes out, man. I'm not ashamed to say it, man, because men do get emotional, obviously, especially after sacrificing so much. Um, and that meant the world. And then unfortunately, come February, I think it was kind of like a mix of reasons why they made that change. Obviously, I think Blitz overall is a slightly better AWPer than Infrequent. And then you have, I don't know how public this is. I don't know if I should be saying it, but there's like kind of a thing going on between Chiefs and Icon at the moment. So they obviously dropped their roster, and then Ofnu and Zeus are available as a package deal. Plus, they could play a little bit extra. It just kind of like I was like the little guy in the corner that was like, yeah, unfortunately, but just kind of got affected by that, right? So that's the third time, and you know, can we see a fourth? I don't know. Like that's what I'm aiming for, man. It's never
Yeah,
give up. It's never give up attitude. But really, like, and I didn't even cover most of the details of that, all the international trips, all the the ups and downs and things like that. But I guess overall, like my CS story is like a kind of like a wave, right? It's like
Hmm.
up, down, up, down, up, down. And the Chiefs was probably the highest. And then at the moment, we're obviously trying this Ground Zero project. Look, it's not going too badly, but I will get into that. But look, it's just almost like a sad story, really. But it has had some real happy times, yeah. But I'm hoping for a fourth opportunity.
Yeah, honestly, man, it sounds like it's a story of just being able to push through all odds, and honestly, like that's especially for someone like me. I find that quite inspirational. The fact that you were able to keep taking those hits and keep going and keep making it there. And I mean, I remember when you took down Greyhound, and at that point in time, I was willing to give you guys a serious shot at being, the number one in Australia. And then, listen, I mean, I wasn't the only one that I think was vocal about the changes to that team.
Yeah.
And it sucks to hear it, man. Honestly, it really does. But
Yeah, look, I mean, good for them. I hope that they do well. Often has been playing fairly decently, so I'm happy for them. I guess the biggest disappointment was that we were on the same wavelength, which is something I was talking about earlier.
yeah,
And it's going to be hard for me to find that. I think they still have it somewhat, but I'm struggling to find that at the moment, and I hope I do, and I'll keep trying. But yeah, I guess in terms of the story, man, like I really, really hope that one day, like maybe I don't have to quit for it to happen, but like really, I don't. I mean, I know people have moved countries. I know people have done crazy things for Counter Strike, right? But I think I'm really up there with like the top couple of people that really their stories should be known, man, to this Counter Strike world of how much has actually gone in, man, because it is effed up. Like the amount of like people would be like, if people know about the whole story, man, which is pretty much I've covered most of it, but just not in detail. It's pretty surreal, man. Like I don't think many others have actually done that.
yeah. It sounds like it's a lot of work to put in, and I don't think it's wrong to say that you are. Yeah, you'd probably be the most experienced and most highly valued in-game leader in the Australian scene for sure. That's definitely the way I look at it, and I know there's multiple people that I know that look at it as, especially when you came into this Ground Zero lineup as, okay, shit, okay, there's something legitimate that
Yeah.
they can work with now. And I always thought that, when you coming into Ground Zero, which I'd like to talk about, is
Mhm.
this idea that the project would be built around you. Was that the sort of idea that you came in with? What's it been like working with this Ground Zero project?
Look, that was the idea. Um, it's a little bit confusing because basically I don't know how much of their issues previously to me joining was down to the leadership. I feel like obviously Extinct is a really great player. Um, potentially some of his firepower made the team seem worse than it was, although him being really smart. Also, with all respect to Nickers as a player, his work ethic was extremely poor. So then, to replace Nickers with myself, and I came in and dumped everything, man. Like I'm pumping these guys with like defaults, strategies, pistols, eco rounds, force buys, anti forces, anti ecos, protocols, reactions, like the terminology when we communicate,
The whole
all these
archives.
things. Of course, yeah, everything, everything. And it was a lot on these players, man. And the problem is that well, I mean, not the problem, but the beauty of the Chiefs roster was like everyone really believed and was motivated. Like, yes, this is the way to play it. This is how we're going to do it, right? These are the best teams in the world going and doing this. Who are we to say that? Let's make our own style, right?
Hmm.
But I think the main reason this, like so far, we haven't achieved the heights that we expected is because we're just not all on that same page, right? I have two young players, in Zemp and Void, and their commitment, like it can't be questioned, right? They're on every night, they're playing hard, they're great players, a lot of raw individual talent. But do they truly believe in kind of what this ideology? Probably not, right? And if you don't do that, you don't remember half the things, and protocols are something that can't always be called by an IGL. They're like, if this happens, do this. If this happens and we're running this, do this, right? Because it's all saves you 5 seconds every time, 5 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 seconds. And all 5 players have to memorize that sort of stuff, right? Anyway, all in all, I think that that's probably the reason that we haven't reached the heights. So at the moment, we're kind of trying a more, a style that's more suited to the raw talents of our players. It'll probably look a little bit silly for the first couple of weeks, but I think if we can, come to an understanding and a style that can suit the young players and suit Panic, who we've brought on board, who has a lot of raw talent, I guess, and fragging power, then maybe I was wrong all along. But really, the proper way to play, and they know this, the proper way to play, and it's been proven at the top level, is to do it how I came in with it. But you need everyone on board, right?
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen, right? For whatever reason, I mean, let's not dive into it. I think it's the best way, and it's been proven. But look, it doesn't mean that what we're trying to do now won't work. Like it could just work for us, right? That loose style where we can kind of mess with other teams a lot more and kind of make individual plays without just succumbing to being robots, right? Like young players, they have a lot of depth and strategy and structure. They just follow that, and that's the end of it, right? So that's what we're trying to do at the moment. And I guess I kind of summed up the whole project so far, but that's where we're at the moment. And I think that's the reason for our lackluster results. Whereas you look at a team like Avant, I think that they're very theory based. They study the game a lot, but they're all on board. They all like to play like that.
Yeah.
Except maybe Hazard, but Hazard's literally just a turret. So the other four will probably be doing the bulk of the work.
Yeah.
And that's why when we play them, I'm trying to play them at the same game, but they're doing it better. And
right.
that's why the project hasn't been as successful as probably people thought it out to be.
And were you using your system at the minor or the minor qualifier?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. See, I thought I know that you. I don't know if you saw Conky tweeting, but it's definitely like the way you guys took down. Who was it? You 2-0'd someone, wasn't it? Paradox.
Paradox.
Yeah. That was really dominant. I especially going into that, I didn't expect that. You looked really good. You had a really good side. It looked very clean. And then obviously, like you said, you came up against Avant, and it just seems like it was almost their tournament or their event where they had. I mean, it's no joke beating Order in 2 best-of-3s and almost 2-0 in Greyhound. I know you can say almost to certain things, but at least you know what I mean. Like that's a big step for them. Actually, so talking about that Avant lineup, you briefly mentioned it there, but what's your general opinion on that lineup? Do you think they can, do you think they can make waves in that minor?
Look, minors are not a joke, man. Like you got MVP, you got Tai Lu in there now, who will probably come back refreshed. You've got Greyhound and probably another Chinese team, and it's not easy, man. I've played at 3, I think. They have the right approach, man, but like there's only so much to be taken from, the minor, because obviously Chiefs aren't there. Order are extremely inconsistent. Greyhound, have been dropping maps for the last 2 to 3 months, although they've been dominant. Look, the good thing is no one can really anti-strat them. They can do a boot camp and just rock up, and you never know, man. Like Apoc's not going to choke. Sterling, I'm sure he's over the whole choking thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got like Jara, who seems to go missing in big games, but that's not a bad thing. It's just that he's IGLing and he's focusing on other things. And Hazard's never played internationally, and Soju's never played internationally as well. So I think that I don't think they'll do well at the minor, but I hope they do. And I think like if they stick together, which people the bookies have kind of got the team imploding after a couple of months, which is something that seems to happen with APOC in the team. All respect to him, of course. Like I don't know all the backstories of all the teams imploding, but that's just what seems to happen. If that doesn't happen, sure, that can be really good. I think, as I said before, they're on the same wavelength. They're working hard. The communication there's no one in that team that doesn't communicate well.
Hmm.
Maybe Hazard, maybe, but I mean, I'm sure he's worked on that since I've last played with him. So yeah, like it's just everything came together for them, man. And I wasn't really surprised. Like I knew that we'd have to beat Ivan in order to make it through. I mean, losing to Rewound, like whatever. Like I still think we're a lot better than them. But
Yeah.
even had we beat Rewound, we would have lost to order. Sorry, even if we had beaten Rewound, we would have lost to either Order or Ivan with the way we were
Mm.
playing.
Yeah. Well, they did look really good. But have you ever? This is kind of a bit of an off-topic one, but have you ever thought? I don't know if this is. Were you always like, I have to be a player, or did you ever even think about being a coach in that kind of role?
No, I always knew I needed to play, man.
Yeah.
There was like a brief period before Chiefs where I got a couple of like people talking to me about coaching.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but
Is there any
I always,
circumstance that you would accept an offer like that?
yeah, definitely. I think that given the fact that I have the responsibilities that I do in terms of a mortgage, bills, kids,
Yeah.
family and stuff like that. If I was to, for whatever reason, be not playing in one of these top 4 to 5 teams, and basically doing it how I did it a long time ago, which is like not under an org, basically doing it out of the love and for free and things like that, then I would have absolutely no choice but to stop. And that's
Yeah.
the unfortunate reality of my situation. So in that circumstance, yeah, but I don't want that circumstance to occur, and that's why I've
Hmm.
been working so hard and continue to work so hard.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And that's just a reality. I mean, like obviously some players, um, they, I mean, I don't know, like for example, like Justillo, right? Extremely good player, but like he also has responsibilities from what I hear, and he won't play unless it's a super good offer, right? So I mean, people can raise questions about that, like, dude, like you need to prove yourself again, you need to play again, you can't just wait for a check, a paycheck, and that's probably some criticism that he receives. But for me, it's like the actual reality is like it is
Yeah.
not possible. I would literally be just wasting my life away from the kids without having it
Yeah.
benefit me in somewhat, you know what I mean, in a
Yeah.
way that helps my family. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Um. So going back to the minor, I don't. I want to make sure if I'm correct on this with the numbers, but recently, or at the least the last two, it seems like Order are really kind of struggling when it comes to these both the qualifiers and the minor. And
Yeah.
obviously in our scene, I think they're generally seen as the number two team. I think with the current situation that Chiefs are in, then they're always Order have secured that spot right now. So from your perspective, why is it that that team can just never? It just seems like they have a lot of experience, right? So why is it that whenever they get to those tournaments, they just seem to always fall a little bit short?
We'll start with saying they're definitely three, not number two, because Chiefs have had it over them for almost a year and a half
Yeah,
in every iteration of the roster, right? I mean, but they're definitely like three, obviously.
yeah,
Why that happened to them, I don't know. I think Elma, Putty, and Imagine, Chris, they kind of they do everything literally. Like they do the strategy. I'm sure they do the protocol, the demo review, the counter stratting, and I think the others kind of just play. You know what I mean? And that might be an issue for them, but it's hard to say. Um, I've also like Zeph's been having quite a lot of low numbers during those big games that they lose, and credit to him, he is doing like the dirty work. He has, if anything, to be honest, his role should allow Hats to succeed, and maybe that's not happening. Otherwise, it might just be internal issues. I don't know, right? But it seems like every time they rock up to something decent, right? ESL, the LAN
yeah,
in Brisbane, they got knocked out in the groups. The week before, we beat them in the qualifier, and then this year they missed out on IEM Sydney and the minor, as you said. Um, and man, like I don't like no disrespect to them, but man, that they get paid the dollars, man, and they play full time like all day. From what I understand, like their theory sessions start in the afternoon, they play throughout the night. The expectation's really high, and so is it. And I know this feeling because the expectation's high on us in Ground Zero as well. And so maybe like it's just a build up, man. Like it's just a mental thing now.
Yeah,
Um, I don't think it's going to get any better if they just stick with the 5 round. Really,
yeah.
I think they need to make a change or two. Um, but it's no one really knows what goes on, right? That's
Hmm.
just the way I see it. I think Elma and Emag do a ton of the work, and maybe it's not just transferring to the players, man, which is something I can empathize with.